Welcome to Uipath training session 10, working with database. In this session, we will cover a few contents like establishing a connection, executing non-query, executing query, bulk insert, and disconnect. So when I say establishing a connection means we will create a connection between database and the Uipath Studio. And execute non-query means we execute a query, but it doesn't reverts with the output and all. Means there won't be any output of this query execution. And when I say execute query, means there will be an output out of this query when it will be executed. And then further we will have a bulk insert. It means we will try to insert bulk records into the table in database. So we will be working with SQL database here, and the last would be the disconnect. It's very easy. We just have to drop this activity and we just have to pass the database name in it, and then this will be disconnected. So let's go to Uipath Studio and let's try with establishing a connection. Okay, so try to search database, and you will have several database functions. So the major database functions which I have explained in here, we will be discussing these. Okay, so establishing a connection will require this activity be used. So using this activity, we will create or we will establish a connection between Uipath Studio and SQL Server. So let me show you the SQL Server which I have open in here. So this is the SQL Server. This is the name of the server. And here I have created one simple database. I was using this database for one of the application, but we will try to work with this database and this data table. So let's create a connection between Uipath and SQL Server. So just double click on this activity and click on configure connection and click on connection wizard. And let me repeat my steps. Click on connection, click on connection wizard and select SQL Server and leave it as it is. Click on OK, and here just refresh. Click on refresh. It will fetch all the SQL Server or all the SQL instances which are available in this machine. So it refreshed. See, I have only one instance at the moment, which is the current one which we are using here. Okay, let's proceed further. Okay, I have selected it, and now it will show me the databases which are available in this instance of SQL. So these are the databases which are currently available in the SQL database in SQL instance. So we're gonna use this database. As I already explained, we will be working with the database. So signal RTB, and let's test a connection. So I'm using window authentication. So like in the real life scenarios, you can use this SQL Server authentication. You need to pass the password like SA, and then the username like SA, and the password whatever you have already set there. So I'm gonna test this connection. So the connection is succeeded. So the output of this activity would be a connection string, or the connection, not a connection string, but the connection. So this, now here we need to select SQL data, system data SQL client, select OK. Let me remove the already created variable which we are not using at the moment. Let me go back to the flow. and remove the unreferenced variable. Okay, so now let's create a new variable for this. So it's db connection. Okay, all right, a db connection is established. And now let's try to execute a query. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select execute non-query. Means I have these records, but let me insert one record here, and then in order to insert one record, so that means you are executing non-query, means which doesn't affect the results. Means it affects the result, but it never come results you it never give you the results back as an output. So the non-execute query means you will perform one query, you will execute one query, but it will not have any output which you can use. Yeah, but you only can get the number of rows affected, nothing else. So I'm gonna execute one non-query. So I'm gonna drag this activity here. Okay, so we need not to configure the connection again because we already have set up the connection. So we simply can use the existing DB connection. If you look at the properties there, if you're creating a new connection, then you need to pass these variables. Rather than passing these variables, you can click on configure connection, and then you will be able to set up a new connection like we have already set it up in the connect activity in the flow. So now, as we already have one existing connection, so we will use this here. Okay, we need not to pass these variables now because I have already set up the connection already, right? So we need not to pass the provider name or the connection string here. So what I need to pass is a command, the SQL query basically. So how you can do it, you can simply write insert into the table name. What's the table name? So let's go back to the database. So the table name is table tbl underscore users. So it's tbl underscore users. Okay. Okay, let's check the connection first, whether it is working or not. So I'm leaving like this because we haven't tested the connection yet. The output is of course db. Okay, because as we know that we have the connection is successfully established. We seen that message in the connect, so we need not to check it. We will check it runtime. Well, when we will execute this query. So let's complete the query first. Okay, so I'm gonna complete this query. So insert into the table name and uh, the column names basically in here, like the column names. Let me check the column names here. Basically, the ID is by default, so we start from username, email address, password, photo, and location. So the first is user name, second is email, third is password, fourth is photo, fifth is location, and then the values in it. So the first value, we always insert the values in single columns. So let me close it as well. Okay, the first value, let's take Jason, and then the email address of Jason @abc.com, and then the second value, second is password, third is password. So just okay, password, let's take password as abc@1234. And then the photo, you can say no, or you can write anything in it. Basically, this database was designed to I've actually created one application, the web application. There I designed this database, so we can pass the null arguments in it as well. Okay, so the last value is location. Let's take New York. All right, it's done. So let's test it. And let's drag one message box in order to check whether it has been executed or not. Say query executed. Okay, let's run it. Okay, it says query executed. Now let me refresh the database, the data table basically. Let's see whether there is a entry in here or not. Here we go. We have the entry in here. So this is how you can execute the simple queries, like when you have to insert one value or two values, or like when there is one single input, or when you have to delete records, when you have to drop the table. So these kind of queries you can execute in execute non-query when you just have to get the affected rows, nothing else. So now, before going to, let me write database here. Before going to the execute query, I would like to use bulk insert first, because now we are inserting the value. Now we got to know that how we can insert one value. Now I will tell you how to insert multiple values in the column, in the table, sorry. So I have two values as of now. So what we can do is here I'm gonna delete this query, and I'm gonna use insert. This is for bulk insert basically. If you ever have worked with the SQL, then of course you know it. So rather than inserting values one by one, we can insert the table, the bulk values into the table. So in order to do that, we need to have a table of values, right? Or the bulk values. So in order to achieve this task, what I have done is I have used the already exist file, and I have created columns here matching to the database. So in the database we have 5 columns, and here I have created the same columns here, and I have inserted 2 values, like one is John, another one is Mary, and then the email address, .com, and then this is how you can enter the values. Or if you have values in the Excel file, that would be really great, because this is how you can get the Excel values to the data table, and then you can insert that data table into the SQL data table. acc.com, just taking the dummy values. Okay, take Amsterdam. Okay, so I have these 2 values. Like similarly, we would have multiple values. You can insert multiple values in one go rather than using insert into statement. So I'm gonna save this file. I've saved it. The name is test Excel. I'm gonna go back and double click on this activity. Instead of configuring a new connection again and again, I've already set up the connection, and I'm gonna use the existing connection here, which is DB connection. And we need not to pass connection string, provider name, because everything is included in this connection. So what we need to pass is the data table. So how we can pass the data table here, as we don't have any data table yet? Yeah, we can pass the table name which going to be impacted with this data. So let's pass table users. Okay, so this is all we need to do. Just we are only left with the data table. So let's get the data into the data table first. Let's drag these activities down and take read range activity. I'm going to take this one. Here I need to pass the worksheet name or the address basically. Okay, so let's select test Excel and just make it wide. So when I leave it blank, it means it will be using the used range. Wherever the values in Excel, it will get the values out of it. Means it's basically a replacement of used range function there in Excel. Okay, so now let's create a data table. Bulk data. Alright, so now we have the data table created, and set it to the start node. Alright, connected to the connection string, and to the insert. Yeah, why there is a error? Because we didn't pass the data table name. Yeah, so we're gonna pass it. So to the message box. So here now we have the data table, which is bulk data. It's all done. Okay, now I'm gonna execute this query. So let me refresh the table again. Basically I can execute this query here. So we have only 2 entries as of now. Let's execute the workflow. Alright, it's done. Query executed. Now let's check the database. I'm just gonna execute the same. Okay, here we go. We have 4 values now. So we had 2 values in the Excel file. Let me open the Excel file, whether it has executed the query properly or not. Okay, in here I have John and Mary. The email address is Smith bbc.com and Paul acc.com. Here we have Smith and Paul, and the password is abc at 12 and ffgg at 12 and photo no, and the locations are Amsterdam and California. So it's all done. So this is how you can insert the bulk records into the table, into the SQL data table, or any of the data table of the database which you are using. So let's go back to Uipath Studio, and I am gonna delete these activities because I'm not gonna use these activities anymore now. I'm gonna set, because connection we need for everything, right? So I'm gonna leave it as it is in this message box. So what's next? Here. Okay, so I'm gonna give you another example of execute non-query, just to tell you how many queries we can perform with it, how many statements we can like what all we can do with it basically. So I'm gonna perform one delete function just to delete one record out of the table. So I'm again gonna use the execute non-query. Execute. This time I will okay, same, and the SQL query. So this time I'm gonna use the delete function here. Delete query. I'm gonna delete one record from the data table. Delete from, we have the table name, and table name is user table underscore users, where, so I am gonna delete JSON record. So where the username is equals to JSON. Username is equals to JSON. Alright, that's done. Let me connect these nodes. Okay, let me show you the query again. It's just, I'm just deleting one record from the data table in the SQL server. So this is what I've done in here. Okay, I'm gonna execute this. So as of now we have this JSON record exists. So okay, so now I'm gonna execute this query. So it's done. Let me check the record now. Okay, so it has successfully executed the delete function, the delete query. Okay, now I'm gonna delete this, and now we will execute query. Means it will give us some results. So basically what we use is the select query. So I'm gonna use the same query here. So using that select query, you can get the data into the data table, and then you can save that data table into any of the Excel file, or you can use that data table to get the values out of it and push the values to the web page or to any ERP system or CRM system, whatever your process is, that depends. So what I'm gonna use is I'm gonna execute query. I'm gonna select the records from this data table, and I'm gonna push those records into the Excel file. Okay, so execute query. So the connection will remain same. Here I just have to write the query and have to pass the data connection, database connection. Okay, so the query will be like select star from table users. Okay, that's all, and the output will be into the data table. So I am gonna use the data table which we created for bulk database. Alright, I guess it won't work. No, it should work, I guess. Let me check whether there is a new instance of bulk. No, then there is an issue. So what you can use is we can reuse this data table, or you can simply right click there and create a new data table. Well, what I prefer is use the existing variables. So new data table. Okay, now I guess I'm not gonna get the error. Let's see. So I've used this, and I am gonna write this range. I'm gonna write this data table to the Excel file, to the same Excel file. Okay. Write range. Select the file. Okay, we're gonna write the table A1. Yeah, the data table which is bulk data. That's all. Okay, so I'm gonna run it, and so in order to do that, just check whether you're adding the headers or not. You just have to add the headers in order to get the headers from the data table, database basically. Yeah. So I can also remove these values from here, and I can save it. So now this file is empty. Let me open it and show you. Okay, there is no value in it. I'm gonna close it. I'm gonna run it, and let's see what happens. Okay, query executed. Okay, let's open the Excel file. Here we go. But this time it's like it has taken the ID as well, because there was an ID column, but we have the values here. So this is how you can get the values from data table from the database, and you can insert those values into the Excel file, or you can use those values for the ERP or CRM system or any web page. So this was all about execute query. You can perform several options, but the way you will get the output, there you will use the execute query. And where you don't want any output, and you just execute one query where the rows are affected, then you can use execute non-query. So I'm going to close this. Okay, and now we will use, so we have covered establishing a connection, execute non-query, execute query, bulk insert, and then the last one is disconnect. So disconnect this one. Okay, if I drag it here, I can delete this. I can delete this. See, look at the properties. So when we work with database, it's really important to disconnect the database after you use it, because because what we are doing is we are disconnecting an instance of the database. If like you have certain operations to perform with database, and in the one operation you have open a new instance, and you forget to disconnect or to close that instance. Here you're just closing an instance, nothing else. You're just disconnecting the instance, so that you can use it next time, and you have to open the instance again. Because if you leave it open, then next time when you will try to open the instance, it will show the instance has already been created. The exception will be thrown. So in order to avoid these kind of exceptions, what you have to do is always try to connect, means open an instance, and disconnect means closing an instance. So it's very important in the real life cases or real life processes. So in this instance, you don't have to do anything. You just have to pass the database. The database connection, which is DB connection, nothing else. So there is nothing to test it, because it will be disconnected automatically, and because there is no output, so we can check it. So this is all about the database functions. This is what we use in real life scenarios or the processes. So what we have covered today, we have covered establishing a connection, executing non-query, executed query, bulk insert. Basically it's insert there. It's the name is insert, in the name of the activity is insert in Uipath Studio. Well, because the purpose of this insert function is to insert the bulk values into the data table. So that's why I've used this term bulk insert in here. And then the disconnect. So this is all for the day. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.